Microphone check. Check, test, check, check, test, test, check, check. If I was holding the microphone like this, would you still get a good recording, good sound? Sound pretty good? Seems like it sounds good.
are you doing?
Pretty good. Hey, how are you?
Doing great.
Yeah, so these are.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're getting a mic stand.
They're bringing them.
Yeah.
Howdy.
Eric?
How are things?
Fine, fine.
How are you?
You hanging out there?
Hi.
How are you?
We're hanging out.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
are.
you ready for this? Okay.
Yeah, huh?
I guess they all came for the first one, huh?
Awesome. Good job.
Okay, you said scattering all over. Let's all come down and have a conversation.
He's ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adam Alatri. I'm the president of the Student Government Association. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for being here. Your input and feedback gives the Campus Carry Task Force direction so that we can ensure student, faculty, and staff safety is always at the forefront of our agenda. We'll start off the town hall with a brief 15-minute presentation given by the chair of the Campus Carry Task Force, Eric Fritsch. I believe this presentation will be able to answer most of your questions, so I'll ask that you hold your questions and comments till the very end. Thank you. Eric?
On. Everything's rolling over there because we are live streaming this, and then we're also recording it, and it'll be on the Campus Carry website. So welcome. Thank you for coming today. What the plan is that we're going to give you some information about the Campus Carry law requirements. We're going to talk about CHL holders, the data that we have on CHL holders, and then also the estimated impact that we think this law will have on UNT, and then kind of open it up for questions and answers. And just kind of before we start, we have a 23-member task force that is assigned to basically with the task of building a draft campus carry policy that will go to President Smatros in the middle of December. And so just as way of introduction of the task members that are here, task force members that are here, we have Lieutenant David Owens from the UNT Police Department. We have Elizabeth With from Student Affairs. We have Damian Torres from the Multicultural Center. Is that the correct terminology for his event? And then I already met Adam. And then Zane snuck up in the back. He's from the union. And then Margarita Venegas from URCM, University Relations. They are all on the task force. So let me run through the presentation. As Adam said, I think it will address some of the questions. We think it's informative and gives us a baseline, and then we want your feedback on your questions and your comments. But basically, we've already done that. That's just the overview of what we're doing. Introduce the task force members. We'll overview the campus carry law requirements. We will talk about CHL holders, since those are the ones that are specifically addressed by the law. And then we'll talk about some data that we have from the Texas Department of Public Safety, and then the estimated impact on UNT. So what are the requirements of the law? A few things before we jump into some of the more detailed requirements, because I want to make sure everybody's got a good understanding of what the requirements are. First thing is that this was obviously passed in our last legislative session, but it wasn't the first time it was brought up. Several legislative sessions in the past, campus carry has been brought up. It has not passed. It was passed this past legislative session. It was signed into law by Governor Abbott. It will take effect August 1 of 2016. So there'll be a couple things you hear me repeat several times, because repetitiveness is not a bad thing when it's a critical fact that needs to be recognized, and that is the law takes effect August 1, 2016, and so that's our target date. So for us as a committee, the plan is this. We draft the policy, we give it to President Smatros in the middle of December. It then goes to the Board of Regents for final approval in February of 2016, and any amendments that they want to make regarding it. And then that gives us from February 2016 to August 1 of 2016 to then implement training and educational sessions with our campus community, faculty, staff, and students regarding the campus carry policy on campus. And so that will involve clearly risk management, UNT Police Department, student affairs, housing, et cetera. And so that's kind of the plan moving forward. What the law specifically states is this. It allows concealed handgun license holders, so CHL is what we refer to them as, to carry a concealed handgun on or about their person on campus. So that's what the law specifically states. And again, it takes effect August 1, 2016. There's two terms that sometimes come along. We hear about campus carry, which is what we're here to talk about today, and open carry. Campus carry is concealed handguns on campus. Open carry is kind of like a handgun in a holster like you'd see a police officer doing. Open carry does become law in the state of Texas January 1 of 2016, but it will not take place at UNT. Institutions of higher education are specifically excluded by the law to allow open carry, so open carry will not be the policy at UNT. Campus carry, though, does apply to UNT, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a few minutes. And in bold, I put there that UNT is going to abide by the requirements of the law. I mean, there's been chatter. I haven't heard much yet, so I don't know if the town hall meetings are helping or if people are planning their protests. I don't know what's going on, but one or the other. But there was a lot of talk initially through our web form that we should fight this, that we shouldn't allow guns on campus, that we should fight it in the courts, et cetera, and that's not going to happen, okay? We're not here to discuss the pros and cons of campus carry and should we have it or should we not have it. The legislature has already made that decision for us, and we are going to have it, and we're going to meet the requirements of the law, and that's what the policy will do. So some more specifics about the law. You know, I said repetitiveness isn't a bad thing sometimes. It's an important critical fact. The first bullet point is repetitive. It just tells you what campus carry is again. It allows for concealed handgun license holders to carry a concealed handgun on or about their person while on campus. There are provisions in the law that allow us to carve out what we're just calling, so that we can chat about them, gun-free zones. So the law does allow us as a university community to put in our policy areas in which concealed handgun license holders cannot carry. And very interested, once the presentation is done, in hearing your input about areas we should consider for gun-free zones. This is really a consultative process with faculty, staff, and students. This is the second student forum, specific student forum we've had. We had one at Discovery Park that was faculty, staff, and students. Students were involved in that one, and we've heard some feedback, but I can tell you this, the committee, the task force, hasn't sat around the table yet and said, these are the 12 places that are going to be gun-free zones. We want to hear from you about what those options should be. But, always a but when something like good, like, okay, we get to have gun-free zones. Some people think that's a good thing, but the gun-free zones can't be so broad that they nullify the intent of the law. So we can't make the gun-free zones so broad in application that it prohibits a concealed handgun license holder from carrying on campus. So the example that I've used is classrooms. We couldn't say that all classrooms on campus are gun-free zones, because then that doesn't allow concealed handgun license holders from going to class, prohibits them from going to class, and it prohibits our faculty, who may be CHL holders, from going to classes as well. It's just too broad. And so we have to be very strategic in identifying these areas, and as you see in a minute, we have to be able to justify why we've carved out these gun-free zones. Middle part that I missed in the second bullet point is that we will have to give effective notice of these gun-free zones. A couple slides ahead, that's the effective notice. So kind of like sometimes when you walk into bars and places, it will say, guns aren't allowed here, same kind of thing. So any areas we carve out on campus, by August 1, 2016, we will have to provide people with effective notice that they cannot carry their concealed handgun in this building, if it's a building, or in this area of a building, if it's an area of a building, etc. Okay? So after doing what we're doing today, this is now the 5th town hall meeting. We have 2 remaining with faculty, 1 tomorrow, 1 on Thursday. After this consultation process, we also have a website, campuscarry.unt.edu, that has a share your thoughts form. So that information is coming to the committee as well. We also have an email address, campuscarry@unt.edu. We're getting input from the email address as well. All that information goes to the 23 members of the task force. After we take all of this together, we are then going to draft the policy that I've said goes to the president for review in the middle of December. Also, the requirements, we're just covering the requirements of the law. Requirements of the law also allow for provisions and rules to be established regarding residence halls. We'll answer any questions you may have about that during question and answer time. But we do have a subcommittee of our task force comprised of student affairs, housing, UNTPD, risk management, etc., that are really taking that on. What are we going to do with residence halls and CHL holders that live in our residence halls? And again, about the redundancy, bold, effective date. Effective date is August 1, 2016, so it doesn't exist right now. It is not in effect until next year. That's the effective notice I've already shown. Just a few other things regarding the kind of the procedural process. One I've already mentioned. It goes to the Board of Regents for final approval. They can make any amendments they want to. Those amendments are final. So in February 2016, we will have our campus carry policy for UNT, and we will know what that is. We will then share it with everyone. So we're required by law to publish it, to give it to staff and students and employees and faculty. We are required to put it on our institution's webpage, so you will have it. And then September 1, 2016, every 2 years thereafter, we have to basically provide a report to the state legislature that says, these are our gun-free zones, and justify each one. That's why we have to be strategic in what we identify as our gun-free zones, because we have to report that every 2 years. Just some additional things. So these items aren't part of the law. It's just some additional items that we've picked up in conversations, so we've integrated into the PowerPoint presentation. Is UNT cannot revoke the right of a CHL holder to carry on campus. Revocation and suspension is all done by the Texas Department of Public Safety. That's their responsibility. So we have no say in that whatsoever. That is handled by DPS. Once the law is effective, everybody knows when it's effective, right? August 1, 2016. Yeah, I keep saying that. Once it's effective, there's still going to be 2 criminal acts related to CHL holders. And that is basically showing their weapon in plain view. So it's a concealed handgun, but if it is exposed in plain view, that will be a criminal act, and the UNT Police Department can take action on that. Or if the CHL holder enters a gun-free zone in which effective notice has been given, that will also still be a criminal act, and UNTPD can take action. I've already mentioned about open carry, but just again to clarify, because when we first started these town halls, there was a lot of concern about open carry. Open carry will not happen on campus. That is the exposing of the weapon in a holster, just like a police officer does. It does become law in Texas, so you'll probably see it at Kroger after January 1, 2016, but you will not see it on this campus because, as it says, the law specifically excludes institutions of higher education from open carry. The last thing is that I think is important is that before we move on to the next part on concealed handgun license holders is that UNT cannot require a CHL holder to self-identify. The only entity that can require somebody to self-identify as a CHL holder is the police. So me as a supervisor, as a chair of a department, can't ask my faculty, are you a CHL holder, are you a CHL holder? They are not required to self-identify, and we don't have legal authority to require them to do so. So that's the campus carry requirements. Now we're going to kind of tunnel into what we know about CHL holders, because that's what the law specifically applies to. So the first thing is I'm going to kind of run through a laundry list of CHL requirements. And basically the bottom line is this, is that there's a detailed, lengthy process to get a CHL. And my summation of what you're going to see in the next 3 PowerPoint slides very quickly is that CHL holders are exceedingly law-abiding citizens because they have to be to, 1, get the license, and 2, to keep the license, because as I said, DPS has the right to revoke it and to suspend it. First rule, got to be 21 years of age. So 21 years of age is the minimum age limit to get a CHL. You go through a classroom training, you go through a written exam, you go through basically a shooting proficiency exam. You also, all the training that is done to get a CHL must be done by a DPS, Department of Public Safety certified instructor. And then there's all these rules about criminal activity. So never been convicted of a felony, haven't been convicted of a Class A or B misdemeanor in the past 5 years. So if you know about the categorization of our offenses in this state, the only thing lower than that is a Class C misdemeanor, and that's a finable only offense. Basically, that's what you get a ticket for. And so B's and above pretty much cover everything. So you can't have had any criminal activity, A and B misdemeanor in the last 5 years, no convictions, and then you can't currently be charged with an A or B misdemeanor or under felony indictment, and that's part of that suspension process. If somebody does get arrested for DWI, DPS clearly will know about that. They can then suspend the license because you've been charged with a misdemeanor offense. Not a fugitive from justice. That would, to me, seem to make sense. Can't have a CHL if you're a fugitive from justice. And then that font gets really, really small, but not a chemically dependent person. Got to be able to exercise sound judgment in the proper use and storage of the handgun. No misrepresentation on the application process. DPS does a background investigation, and then it says for further information, this website. But basically, this is just kind of the thumbnail of it. It's actually quite complex, and there's a lot of rules, and we just don't have time to go into all of those rules. But if you're interested in like the eligibility, ineligibility factors, all I do is this. I know website's there, but I just go into Google and put Texas Department of Public Safety concealed handgun license, and poof, the website pops up with all the rules, etc. So that's kind of the summation of that is. It's a fairly intense process to get a CHL. Second thing is, as I mentioned at the beginning, is that CHL holders are exceedingly law-abiding citizens. Have to be to get the license, have to be to maintain the license. What do we know about them? A few slides on that. We know about 3% of Texas residents have a CHL. So it's about 3% of the population has a CHL. Most of them are older. 86% of them are over 30. About 2/3 of them are over 40. It's unlikely you have to be 21 at a minimum, but it's unlikely for someone in their 20s to have a CHL. Most people are over the age of 30. So we pull conviction data. Texas DPS, same website I mentioned before. Just Google Texas Department of Public Safety, concealed handgun license. All this information is there. They track convictions of CHL holders, produce a report every year. I know it says 2013, but I'm a criminal justice professor. Welcome to criminal justice. We're usually running 2 years behind on stats. That's just the way criminal justice operates on published statistics. So this is when I built the PowerPoint 2 weeks ago. 2013 is all that's out there. Maybe up now, 2014, but this is what we've got. So what DPS basically does is they track all criminal convictions in the state of Texas. And in 2013, what that pie chart says basically is there were about 51,000 criminal convictions. So that's all of our offenses. 51,000 criminal convictions in the state of Texas in 2013. and 158 of them, or about 1/3 of 1% of them, were CHL holders. Again, point, not likely to commit criminal activity, not in comparison to the remainder of the population. People's greatest concern, from what I've heard, is regarding an increase in violent acts on campus, whether that's active shooter situations or just violent acts that occur and assaults, etc. And so I put this slide together, taking that conviction data. In criminal justice, when we talk about violent crime, we use typically an FBI definition, and it involves around 4 offenses: murder, sexual assault, robbery, and assault, aggravated assault, and that's basically what you see there with the addition of terroristic threat. And what this shows is total convictions for the entire state in 2013. There were 13,746 convictions for those violent offenses. So that total convictions column adds up to 13,746. How many of those convictions were of CHL holders? 31. So 0.225% of them. So again, my message to people is that they're not, CHL holders are very, very unlikely to commit a violent offense. Why do I say that? Well, first, the data shows that. The data on criminal convictions for violent offense in this state shows that they are exceedingly unlikely to commit a violent offense. What do we think is going to happen at UNT? Well, first we kind of want to know how many do we have. They're not going to self-identify. Can't make them self-identify. So we got about 42,000 people, 37,000 students, 5,000 employees, roughly. 42,000 people, applying that 3% standard, we're probably talking about 1,260 CHL holders at UNT currently, fall 2015 numbers, using fall 2015 numbers. We are taking a particular look at the residence halls. We have, as I mentioned, we have a subcommittee on that. We got over 6,000 people students living in our residence halls this semester. Only 500 of them are 21, so only 500 of them meet the minimum eligibility requirements. There's still all the other stuff about no felonies and all that, but just to give you an idea, there's only 500 students that are 21 or older that currently live in our residence halls. With the data that we used before, 86% of CHL holders are 30 years of age or older. We really don't expect very many people at all to be living in our residence halls who are CHL holders. Now, we can talk when it's question time and stuff about what options we're looking at, but from a number standpoint, it's probably going to be very few people that have a CHL and are living in one of our residence halls. Campus carry is new, CHL is not. So the ability to carry a concealed handgun has been law in this state since 1997. So we'll just round it off and say about 20 years. It's been law. And so we asked UNTPD to look through their records and see if there have been any cases of CHL holders violating the law. In other words, CHL holders bringing their weapons onto campus when they're not allowed to because campus carry doesn't exist. And according to that, as that says, there's no cases of CHL holders committing a criminal violation by bringing their weapons onto campus all the way back since 1997. The last thing we're going to talk about, and I'll open it up to questions and comments, is that we're not alone. We're one of 8 states that have campus carry. We're the most recent state. So every state university in the state of Texas is grappling with this issue of campus carry this year. But other states have had it, and Colorado has had it the longest. They have had it since 2003. And so we looked at some data from their 2 large state universities, Colorado State, which is smaller than us, but still has about a little over 30,000 students, so a large state university. They've had campus carry since 2003. They report no incidents of a CHL holder either displaying or discharging their weapon. Colorado Boulder, the big CU campus, reported 1 incident, and it involved an employee at the dental school who was showing her weapon to a colleague, and it accidentally discharged, and then she was subsequently fired. So 12-year period, 2 major state universities, and 1 incident, that incident being an accidental discharge. So we have that kind of data to rely on as well to kind of determine how much of an impact this is going to have at UNT. You being here means you're interested in this. So you've heard the presentation. We're going to open it up and engage in a dialogue and answer your questions and address your comments. But I also want you to know it doesn't end today, because we have a campuscarry.unt.edu website. We're trying to make this process as transparent as possible. We're holding these town hall meetings. We're video recording them. They're live streamed, plus they're being recorded so that others can see them if they aren't available to sit in front of a computer right now and watch it, so they can see what is going on. We will be providing updates on the committee's actions as we proceed towards our December 15th deadline to get the draft policy to President Smatras. We will be providing those updates via the website, so check that out. Also, if you don't get all of your comments out today or all of your questions out today, or if you're like me and the stroke of genius occurs at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're like, who am I supposed to tell? Well, we got 2 ways. On the website is a share your thoughts link. Click on it, fill out the form. It goes to the 23 members of the task force for review. So you'll always be able to utilize that link. Or send an email to campuscarry@unt.edu. Again, share your thoughts. That information will go to the committee as well. Thank you for listening to me. I'm officially done. So now I'm ready to hear from you and answer any questions you have, any comments. If it's something that's better for other members of the task force to answer, then we'll address it to them. And Mo McGinnis snuck in. She's on the task force as well. She is the Dean of Students. And Christopher Lee snuck in too. He is from the Student Government Association. So they're here as well. Yes, sir.
First off, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm an alumni here at UNT. I graduated here summer 2010 with a bachelor's degree in sociology. Unfortunately, I've not been able to get a job with that degree. And my biggest concern is if you allow people to carry guns around the college campus the fall next year, if they have the CHL license, and let's say all these 20-year-olds that are at least 21 decide to do this, how do you know none of them have mental issues, none of them are going to have a bad day to where they lose their girlfriend, lose their job, and have a bad day in school, and they don't take the gun and decide to kill some teachers to get revenge and some students? How do you know that's not going to happen? That's my biggest concern.
Right. I don't think August 1, 2016 is going to change that, because we face that today. I mean, if UNT is a microcosm of society, there's guns on this campus right now. No offense, Lieutenant Owens, but there's guns on this campus right now. And we deal with students that have emotional issues, that have crises in their lives, that have mental health issues, et cetera. We have a care team that Mo McGinnis can speak to more eloquently than I can, that is in place to take care of those situations and to really rally the resources around that person that is facing a time of need. That's really not going to change. Those processes and procedures are still in place today. I think your concern is there going to be an increase in weapon availability then with the CHL holders being able to bring their weapons onto campus? I mean, clearly, college life is stressful. It's also a lot of fun, but it's certainly stressful. And we have safety and security training. We even have active shooter training. We have a care team that is in place to assist students that are in need. And I've used them as a faculty member. Called them up, said, look, this is what's going on with this student. I think you need to reach out to them. And trust me, they jump right on it, and they reach out to that student and try to assist them. You know, but from a CHL standpoint, I mean, all the data and evidence that I would have and that I presented is that it's extremely unlikely that if somebody uses a weapon against somebody on this campus, that that person's a CHL holder. I would, all the evidence points to me that it's not a CHL holder.
Well, yeah, but if you're going to allow people at least 21 years old to become a CHL holder, and one of these people, you don't know their background or what's going on in their life, suddenly decides to use that gun, that's my biggest concern. I mean,
Right.
you know, that's a college student on campus. I mean, how do you know that's not going to happen?
I mean, we don't know that it's not going to happen. And you said we didn't enact this law,
Okay.
and we're not allowing CHL holders, you know, to be 21 to carry handguns. That's all decided by the legislature. CHL has existed for almost 20 years now. Campus carry was passed by the legislature. So this is not something we chose to do. This is something that has been imposed upon UNT and all state universities. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to craft a policy that meets the intent of the law, because we're going to abide by the requirements of the law, but also takes into account the safety and security and the concerns of our students. Do you want to say anything regarding that? Or did I just wrap that all up? I've heard you talk, I mean, I've heard you say that, so all right. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's cool.
Yes, ma'am.
So I read up on the previous town hall meeting. I wasn't able to attend that. And I know that some of the gun-free zones that were suggested by some of the attendees were, you know, Chestnut, McConnell, and other residence halls. But are we also looking at, like, the Union and Willis and, like, those really big student hubs where students will go to study in regards to the Union and do study 24 hours at Willis?
We are compiling a list. So we are looking at everything in which a student has mentioned. Union has been mentioned, but to my knowledge, Willis has not been mentioned before. So it will go on the list. You may be wondering, well, he's not taking notes. How are we going to? We got the tape. We're going to go through it. People are transcribing it. We're creating the list to consider, and then it's the responsibility of the committee, the 23-member committee, to then look at those places that have been discussed by our campus community and identify the criteria we want to establish to create those gun-free zones. And so, yes, the Union's been mentioned. Willis has not, but it's on the list now to be looked at.
All right, thank you for letting me speak. I kind of have a two-part question, if that's okay with you.
Yes, you may have to do one at a time, because in my head you can only handle one at a time, but we'll give it a shot. I mean, I may say, can you repeat the second part? I'm sorry. It's just the way my head works.
My first question would have to precede the second. So it has to do kind of building off that gentleman's back there's question. Certainly, college is a very stressful time of life, and that every student at some point goes through some sort of crisis, more or less, compared to others. And that brings into factors not only affecting mass shooter situations, but also things like suicide, which the risk of a student committing suicide is exponentially increased while during college. These are crucial years, and so, of course, we have a wonderful health and wellness center in order to help students cope with adjusting to college life and getting over these personal issues. So is it possible for the Health and Wellness Center to cooperate with available state departments that issue CHL potential candidates, or would privacy laws kind of prevent us from cooperating and determining who would be more or less in danger of harming themselves or others by attaining a handgun?
I think I know the answer, but does somebody definitely know the answer? Because then I'll let you make sure. Because HIPAA, right? But you want to say it? Yeah, the HIPAA laws, so privacy regarding health records, mental health included, are restricted, so therefore they cannot be shared with the Texas Department of Public Safety, and that's one of the challenges that we face. They cannot know. We cannot share that information with them.
Right.
Correct? Okay.
I see. I have one last question. The child
that.
care
You split
center.
them up for me.
No,
Yes.
this is totally wrong. The child care center is at the absolute top of the list for being a gun-free zone, right? You guys have already thought about that, right?
Yeah, Child Development Lab, definitely. We've heard it at the very first. Actually, I think I used it as an example to get kind of the conversation started. But the Child Development Lab, since it's a daycare center, has definitely been put on the list of things to consider.
All right, and one last follow-up question regarding the places that may or may not be potential gun safety zones. I believe that it was the current, or maybe he's the former now, president of the University of Texas, formal Admiral William McRaven, I believe, spearheaded. Chancellor. Oh, fancy title.
Big dog. Yeah.
So he's the one who spearheaded the entire operation behind bin Laden. Just as some background information, I believe he actually made a statement regarding this law once it takes effect, saying that he believes that it will actually inhibit the right to free speech, the First Amendment, as we are all well aware of, and saying that it would inhibit diverse thought and opinions, especially in classes where discourse is tantamount to the curriculum, such as political science or other classes where debating ideas and beliefs is just simply part of the education system. And if you do or do not have a gun, it may prevent someone from speaking their mind, at least to some extent. And so arts can, although we said that we cannot make every classroom a gun-free zone, and that serves to make sense, but can some classrooms be gun-free zones, specifically ones that are at a higher risk for having heated discussions such as that?
This has been brought up, and I appreciate your comment. It was brought up in a previous session, and so we put it on the list of things to consider. You know, we have to, we as a committee, and then the president, and then the Board of Regents, and all of us are also interacting with the Office of General Counsel, our legal counsel here on campus, to figure out what we can and cannot do. We have to be able to balance, you know, what is transpiring within that classroom with a CHL holder's right by law to carry on campus. And then the question becomes, how broad are those restrictions? How many classes are we talking about? Because if they're few in number, it may be possible. If there's a lot of them, then it may be much more difficult to be able to implement, because again, as we discussed, we can't put something in place that's so broad that it nullifies the intent of the law. But if there are certain courses, few in number, particularly heated exchanges are known to occur, then that certainly can be something that the committee can assess.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
My name is Jacob. I'm obviously a student here. I'm not a CHL holder. And I'd like to speak to her point and also his point as far as how gun-free zones are relegated. If you actually read the law, the Child Care Center is a gun-free zone from the law. It's not for something UNT to decide. But I believe, as a general student, meaning anything that every student uses or every student has access to, like Willis or even the Union, should not be a gun-free zone, because then you impede on the CHL holders' rights. Now, it is reasonable, say, if Greek Student Life or any group that has a legitimate group-centric building where they are the main users of that building, to come to a democratic process and say, hey, I'm going to use the Greek Student Center as an example just because they are a subsection of the UNT population. If all the fraternities and sororities come together and say, hey, we want Greek Student Life and our building to be a gun-free zone, then absolutely, they're the primary users of that building. They wanted it that way, so then yes, they should be able to have that designated as a gun-free zone. But as a person who has, like, I don't have a CHL, but if I did have a CHL, why should I not be allowed to go into Willis Library if I've met all the requirements of the law because someone feels anxious about it? When the point of the CHL is you wouldn't know that I have a firearm. So if it's something that's general access, like say the registrar's office or the Eagle Student Center, it shouldn't be a gun-free zone, because then you inhibit the rights of the students who have chosen to go through the process of getting the CHL. You inhibit their rights, which goes against the intent of the law. And I mean, I feel that that fills the void of, you know, what should be and shouldn't be a gun-free zone or not. It's not really a question. I just
No, it's a comment,
statement.
but thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Well, mine wasn't a question. It's just like an observation. So on one of the the charts you had where it said like the crimes that were committed, how many of the total population and how many of the CHL holders committed. I think it would be, although not really the argument, but for you to say that the amount of convictions of CHL users like were less than the total population, I mean, it's kind of expected since there's, I think you said there was only 3% of the total population here in Texas that has them. So it's like, it's obvious that it's going to be less of them. So it's going to seem like, you know, I'm not saying they're not good people. I mean, there are some that are good people. Well, the majority of them are. But it was just like an observation that I had that, of course, it's going to seem like a less amount of number of people who have the CHLs that are going to commit crimes because there's not that many of them to begin with.
Right, and in showing that slide, what is intended to be, I guess, illustrated by it is that if it was proportionate, if CHL holders committed criminal activity at the same level as non-CHL holders, if 3% of the Texas population is a CHL, you would expect 3% of the criminal convictions to also be of CHL holders. And what that shows is 3% CHL holders, but 0.225% are involved in a violent criminal conviction. So it's disproportionate. That's what this is intended to show. You're exactly right. You would expect it to be smaller, but it's still substantially smaller than that 3% representation in the community. Thank you.
For the special populations that are going to be minors, like TAMS, the TAMS students, and obviously the child lab, would there be any consideration to actually have like some metal detector, or do we have budget for that? Like, what is that something that's possible through the law?
I think under the law it is possible. The chief of police is not here. That question has come up in prior forums, and he has said that for particular high-risk events, metal detectors, primarily wands, are used at those events, but he does not foresee, again, I'm speaking for him, he's not here, but I think I'm getting it right. He does not foresee access into buildings, et cetera, having metal detectors on them because that building's been deemed to be a gun-free zone. Part of it is the expense of it and the labor intensity of having to staff metal detectors, et cetera. But we currently do and will continue to do wanding type of
for like big
things
events
at
at like
the
the library
high-risk
mall and
events.
stuff like that?
At high-risk events.
Like high-risk events like University Day at the library mall,
He's never gave an example.
Okay.
Do you have an example? I don't have. He's never provided an example.
Okay.
No one's ever asked. He just has referred to them at particularly high-risk events.
Okay.
So
the most common thing would be like anytime there's a public speaker that is nationally prominent.
Oh, like Distinguished Lecture Series. Okay, great.
That has the Secret Service protection or Department of Defense protection. Those, by contract, we have to provide additional security. And then there's other things like particular like parties, things like that we do.
Mm-hmm. And my second question is there room in the law to update? Because I know there was some talk about like serving alcohol in the union. So, that's cool. But like, is there a way to, is there chances to update the law as our buildings come up and as other buildings get used for different purposes?
So the law is the legislature's responsibility. So every 2 years they can do whatever they want to with it. But from our standpoint, we have asked the Office of General Counsel, who is helping us draft the policy, that we would like to see the ability to have the designation of a gun-free zone to grow over time as buildings get built. A building that's being used for purpose X today is used for purpose Y in 2 years. We believe we need a procedure in place that makes the law more dynamic, or a policy, not the law so much, but the policy dynamic, so that as things change, we can make changes to those gun-free zones. Because what's going to happen in the policy is that here's the list of the gun-free zones. That should not be stagnant. It needs to change. And for example, you mentioned the Child Development Lab. The Child Development Lab, some have said that yes, the lab, but then some have also said in these meetings, you know, the entire building because children are running around. Well, the Darlene Callahan, space management person for the university, was here and said sometime soon the Child Development Lab is being taken out of Matthews Hall and being moved over to Mean Green Village in one of the isolated buildings by itself. So that's a change. So, you know, right now we would need gun-free zone there, but then that's going to change because the Child Development Lab is going to move to a new location. So we have to have a dynamic process, and whatever that procedure is to designate an area gun-free, even though it's not on the original list, we've requested that to be included in the policy.
Okay, thank you. And also thank you for hosting these again, because they're awesome.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Right. So we've heard the comment before, and so the issue for the task force that I don't have an answer to, but the issue for the task force to take under consideration is how do we provide avenues for people to securely, basically to secure their weapon before they go into a gun-free zone. We've heard it most from staff, so like facility staff that say, I run around campus all day long into different buildings, what am I supposed to do? Custodial staff has brought it to our attention. Now you as a student are bringing it to our attention. We have to grapple with that. I don't know if we're talking, you know, gun lockers in particular locations. I know some universities, again, we're not the first to ever do this. Some universities do have that where people can secure their weapons. Most likely, if those aren't provided, then it does become you go and take it to your vehicle in order to secure it. But we know it's an issue. We know it's a topic to address. We're in still the consultative time. We're gathering the ideas. Then we got to sit around, all 23 of us got to sit around, and we got to hammer out these issues and figure out what's doable. You know, if it is a budget issue, if it becomes, you know, some infrastructure thing we have to have, how much is it going to cost? Do we have the funding for that? All that kind of stuff, that will go with the package. It's kind of like the policy, but then also then the cost of the implementation of the policy. Because part of this also, besides just the securing of the firearms, is that we need to, besides just, it's like you said, not everybody reads the policies. You know, it's not just a matter of sending out the policy via email and posting it on the website. We're going to have to do educational and training seminars from orientation on through current students with faculty and with staff. And that takes time and it takes resources to be able to do it. And we plan on having, you know, along with the policy, there will be some form of budget request, what's required to implement the policy. Because we've provided a safe environment for the students. Yes. Yep. Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Hi. Me personally, I am not fond of guns. I'm okay with it being police officers. Military is different. I am very afraid of guns. So I was wondering, have any studies been done on psychological effects of there being guns in a place where people are used to being safe and secure away from crazy people?
I'm not aware of any, but that certainly doesn't mean that there haven't been studies done. It's just not my core area of research, so I'm not sure of any. I know that what we have looked for is studies regarding campus carry specifically, and I feel pretty confident in saying a study of the type you're talking about applying specifically to campus carry does not exist. Now, whether or not others have done research that looked at the psychological effects of the presence of guns on people that have inhibitions towards guns, I would assume that research has been done, just as a matter of the locations in which they've done them. Oh, yes. Of course you can jump in.
I can.
You don't even have to ask.
Yes.
Jump on in.
And that's not my area of research either, but I will tell you a couple things. We need to remember with this law, you should not know there's a gun in your classroom. You should not know you're sitting in the cafeteria with a gun, okay? But I also want to make sure, a lot of times things have been brought up in regards to mental health. And we've heard the question, guns on campus may trigger my PTSD. Guns on campus may make me more anxious to go to class, whether I know there's a gun there or not. And so know some of the things that we already have in place, the care team. We have somebody on call every day. We see students every day for students in crisis, whether it's suicidal ideation, anxiety, bipolar disorder, all these different things that you're continuing to bring up, and get them in and get them help. But I think, too, another piece of this will come, the education piece that will come forward after we pull out the policy. And I think some of the things that we're talking about education is, do we have a group? Do we have sessions where we kind of address the issue of, ooh, there's going to be a gun in my classroom. I'm concerned about that. That's going to trigger things. And so we have a number of groups for counseling and testing. Maybe that's something we look into. And so know that a lot of things that come out of these sessions as well are going to help our education piece. And I think that we have to look at that. And so we've heard the issue of PTSD a lot in regards to guns and what that does for for different people, and so know that that's something we're definitely continuing to look into. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I guess I have one question and two comments. And the question is, the slide where you had 3% of 42,000 for the UNT population, was 42,000 just the sum of all the students and faculty and staff, or did that account for people who, by demographics, namely age, are ineligible to have a CHL?
It is everybody together. So we didn't, it's basically our 37,000 students. We have a little bit more this semester, and our 5,000 faculty and staff and employees. Basically is what that is combined to get to 42,000. So we did not subtract out under 21. It's just 42,000 overall.
Okay, so that's pretty bound to be an overestimate.
So the number is high. You are correct.
My two comments would be how I would like to see the university handle, particularly like in the residence halls, for the storage, the safe storage of handguns. I think the university should provide a means to attach a safe to the floor, to the wall, whatever logistically works, and then set the financial burden upon the CHL holder to provide the safe and securely attach it to the mounting device. The university could set minimum standards for the safes, and that would help alleviate at least the budgetary concerns for the residence halls, I think. My other comment was, as far as just general locations that I think should be gun-free zones, I think that it needs to be severely restricted on where those gun-free zones are. The gentleman in the back, when he was talking about the sorority, the Greek Life Center and stuff, 100% support his comments. The Child Development Lab is a reasonable place where you have kids running around. The only other locations that I can come up with off the top of my head that might be legitimately considered for gun-free zones would be maybe where volatile chemicals are being handled or stored, such as chemistry labs, Otherwise, I think that as is the case with virtually anywhere else in the state, CHL holders need to be able to carry on campus. That's what the legislature and the governor, did for us this past legislative session.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Just a couple of comments to yours. We have heard, and it is on the list, labs that have like flammable chemicals and stuff in them. Certainly, we've heard. Regarding the residence halls, I just want to kind of explain what we've seen other states do. Doesn't mean this is what we're doing, because we have a subcommittee and we're engaging in this process, and then we're going to decide what to do. But one thing is that states that have had campus carry in place, single occupancy rooms are required. It becomes complicated because then they have to self-identify in a way if you're going to require them to have a hotel safe. But that's the second thing that states have done, is that they, I don't know if the student purchases or the university, but they put hotel safes in a number of rooms and then require the student to secure the weapon, the handgun, in the safe at all times in which they are in the residence hall, because there was concern from staff, and one of the staff ones that work in housing, about students that are in residence halls, so that may leave it on top of their desk while they go to the bathroom, and then another kid, because there's an adjoining bathroom, comes in. That's what some states have done, is they put the hotel safes, and it has to be in there while you're in your residence hall. The third thing that some states have done is a centralized location, usually at the police department, that you go and check it in and check it out. So in other words, you can't have it in the residence hall. So that's kind of the gamut of what other states have done. We know that, and then we're kind of just going to tailor some of those practices to meet the needs of UNT. But thanks for your comments. Yes, sir.
Under what circumstances will CHL holders be allowed to draw their weapon, and will safety reports be analyzed each situation? And why don't CHL holders have to identify themselves?
It's kind of like to this gentleman. You asked 3 questions, and so now my head's like, that's too many questions. So at once. So I'm going to go backwards, because that was the first one. I have no idea, except it's in the law. Does anybody have any idea of why they don't have to self-identify? I mean, they have to identify to the police. That's required. So Lieutenant Owens can ask you, and you have to respond. but me as professor and chair of criminal justice, you don't have to respond to me. I'm not sure, it's in legislation, but I don't know why they did that. This gentleman knows.
This started off in the state of Florida. I've actually done a lot of research on the topic of firearms and concealed carry. The whole purpose of concealed carry is anonymity. In the state of Florida, which was the very first state in the United States to implement concealed carry, they monitored every statistic possible. The idea of concealed carry is anonymity. The criminal is not supposed to know who might be able to resist. So that's one of the reasons for the concealed carry is, somebody feels vulnerable. You have a woman who is a sexual assault victim. She vows she never wants to be a victim again, so she takes upon herself to go through courses and things like that and place an extra burden on herself to be able to protect herself. That's on her. And the idea is she gets some comfort from it. She also has the ability to protect herself should an assailant come at her again. But the purpose of concealed carry is you're not supposed to know it, but the criminal goes, okay, somebody in this area might be resistant to me. I need to go find a different hunting ground.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. So anonymity is the reason. Regarding under what circumstances can they draw their weapon, I've heard the responses from Chief Reynolds in previous sessions and from concealed handgun license holders in previous sessions. So this is my understanding of it, is that basically when they're in fear of serious bodily injury or death for themselves or for someone else, then by law, under our self-defense law, they have the ability to brandish the weapon and take action. Regarding the safety report, see, I remembered all three of them. That's pretty amazing because usually I can only hold two things in my head at a time. But the safety report things, I haven't seen it where we've asked for it to be included in the policy where a safety report is issued, but I'm thinking that any time in which that event occurs, in which there is a weapon drawn on campus, 911 is going to get flooded, and so there's going to be a report. I just can't think of a time where there wouldn't be. So I don't think we're really probably going to put something like that in the policy regarding the need for safety reports, because I think everything's going to funnel to UNTPD. They're going to know that somebody drew their weapon in the chemistry building, and they're going to come and check it out.
Well, and we already have to abide by a federal law called the Clery Act. And the Clery Act would, and one of the sections is both arrests and student referrals for those that have some kind of illegal weapon. And if you use even if you have a CHL and you use it inappropriately on campus, it would still be a violation of the law. And so that comes out October 1st of every year, and you would see those numbers as well. Anything else you want to add to that?
I'll just say one thing.
Don't look at me. I said everything I knew. So,
I was just going to piggyback. I was just going to piggyback on that. There's probably a crime has probably occurred either by the person that caused the threat or the person responding to the threat. A crime has probably occurred. Like Dr. Fritsch said, there are probably some extreme examples that wouldn't fit into that, but a huge chunk of the time, a crime is going to occur and the police need to be called, whether it's the person brandishing or the person that's the threat that the person's brandishing to.
And so then there'll be a public record of it. There'll be a document. It'll be documented.
And if you ever have that situation, you need to call the police. I mean, don't let that. We don't want to forget that step. So.
Yes, sir.
James, student. As we know, having a CHL comes with great responsibility, and that school can be stressful and very hard at times. Should there be a refresher course, like 75% into the semester, reminding students about their great responsibility of having a CHL, with all the added stress and forgetting about their responsibility of having a CHL?
I mean, we can certainly put it under consideration. You've stumped me on my 5th town hall meeting. I haven't heard that as of yet. Because we get, I mean, if how it would work is that it would have to come from the provost, Finley Graves, as a statement to the faculty to say, please announce in class this, this, and this, which we get. And we get reminders about what we as faculty can and can't do, like during pre-finals week. Like all of a sudden we can't just have a brand new paper due, during pre-finals week. So there's those rules. So to me, it kind of fits into that. It fits into really from an academic affairs standpoint, does the provost, in consultation with the deans, want to send reminders out to faculty? Because, I mean, I do at least, and I would say the faculty largely are going to do what is requested of them. So if there's evidence to support a request during nearing finals time of CHL and responsibility plus resources available, if particularly stressful times, et cetera, then that's definitely doable. I've actually heard some universities talking about, these gun-free zones. Some of them can be temporary, and some have actually talked about finals week and just not allowing them during finals week, so because of the stress. But we haven't heard that in our forums, but I've heard it from other schools. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Sorry, just wanted to touch on two things. She mentioned earlier about alcohol possibly being in the union or anything like that. Just for those who don't know, like I said, I've done a lot of research and stuff when on my previous major. Any alcohol along with the CHL, you're going to jail. It's put down during training classes. If you are inebriated, have any alcohol in your possession while you're carrying a firearm, punishments triple, quadruple. You lose your license, massive fines, and jail time. So, also, if you ever look at bars and things like that, you'll see a sign that says 51%. Any establishment that makes 51% or more of its sales through the sales of alcohol is an automatic no-go zone for concealed carry licensees and possession of firearms. Same thing with like the 30-06. So, now the big thing about being out with alcohol is if a person is cognizant of their responsibilities as a CHL, they're not going to be there. They're not going to be carrying their weapon while having access to alcohol. And that's just one of the things.
Thank you.
So I just had a quick thing. Someone had mentioned policy earlier, and then he mentioned something, and I was just wondering if it was something that'd be put into like syllabi, because I know like the Disabilities Act policy goes into our syllabi, and I know most of my teachers even go over it, or professors go over it at the beginning of the class. So would that, like the gun policy, the concealed handgun, whatever policy, be put into syllabi and reminded so that students do know, what they're allowed to do, where they're allowed to go, and all those things, if that's been considered?
No, good point. Again, y'all are stumping me with this. Hadn't heard it before, but I mean, it's definitely possible, just as a matter of the committee taking into consideration. And then really what that involves, it involves the provost, because it falls under academic affairs. He handles all the faculty and all the classes. And just like the ADA statement that goes into the syllabi, there could be some language that is crafted that one could be mandatory, or two, which would probably be more likely or probably more easily to implement, is then optional for the faculty to just pop into their syllabi for those that want to discuss and make students aware about the campus carry law, where it's located, et cetera. It's a very good idea. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So my question is, if it's put in the syllabi and there are going to be people, both students and faculty, that are totally against concealed carry, and nobody should ever, like you said, know that you have your weapon on you, if you have a weapon on you. But if something happens, I mean, I'm an honest guy. I don't care if you're just a police officer or anybody comes up and asks me, hey, do you have a concealed handgun license? I'll tell them yes, and if I'm carrying or not, because that could save them from thinking that they want to say other stuff to me. So I really don't care about the anonymity of it. But if I get in an argument with the teacher on a policy that they're talking about, and they want to voice their opinion on how they feel about the concealed handgun license, campus carry, and how it's wrong and everything, and is there going to be a policy set up to where all of a sudden, no matter what I turn in, I'm failing this guy's class because we don't see eye to eye on our policy thinking. is there going to be anything set up on the faculty side of the house saying, this is a discrimination if you find out somebody's a concealed licensed carrier in your class and you don't believe in it, and those classrooms set up that are non-carry classrooms, and the teacher goes, well, I want all my classrooms like that, and I have to take his class
Right.
because he's the only professor that teaches this.
Right.
So what's going to be set up, how are we going to set up stuff for the students' protection, the CHL protection and their rights,
Okay.
to not have this happen? Because you can say, because UNT is a good family, a strong family, personal opinion is not going to matter, but it's going to be involved in, that decision and that individual's thinking. You can't not have it involved in how you teach a class and how you act towards somebody else.
Right. So few things is that in reference to the comment about the syllabi, at least in my thought, it was more of a standardized statement, not a pro-con kind of statement, just a standardized statement, kind of like we have with the Office of Disability accommodation statement that we have in the syllabi that just lets people know, just like we do with cheating and plagiarism kind of stuff.
Yes.
We have a code of conduct, so it'd be just more of a blanket statement, not pro-con. So with a couple things that I think I need to or should respond to that, and then if I didn't answer everything completely, let me know. Is that the gun-free zones are going to be determined, or at least going to be initially drafted by the task force of 23 people. It's going to go to the president. The president then is the president and has the latitude to do what he chooses, and then it goes to the Board of Regents. The Board of Regents then has the latitude to amend the rules, and once they amend the rules, those rules are final. Once those gun-free zones are established, faculty and staff, faculty in particular, as you're talking about, don't have the ability to change those. So the faculty can't make their classes gun-free, and we get to have, the next two town hall with faculty. We haven't had one yet. I'm sure that will be discussed amongst them because I'm sure some are wanting that. That can't happen. I mean, the gun-free zones have to go into the policy. Now, we do want the policy to be dynamic to where we can create temporary gun-free zones. So we have hundreds of events on campus, and maybe some event does need to be gun-free. We want a process in place to deem that. But as far as, I don't like guns and I'm Professor X and I don't want them in my class and you can't have them in my class, it can't happen. If it does happen, it's a violation of policy. That faculty member has violated the policy, and then there are processes and sanctions for violating university policy. And so they're not going to have that flexibility. Really the same goes with them going after you because you have expressed a differing opinion. And from a faculty standpoint, and I'm chair of the Department of Criminal Justice, so I have 11 other faculty. And so as a supervisor, I would encourage this among my faculty, is that we do engage in dialogue with people. We discuss criminal justice issues, and a lot of them are hot button topics, and gun control becomes one of those, and the death penalty becomes another, is that you as a faculty member need to remain objective, is that my assessment of you needs to be an objective assessment of you. And so there should not be times in which just because you disagree with me and I'm the faculty member, I'm going to take it out on you. That's not allowed today, and that's not going to change with the campus carry policy being implemented. It should not occur, and there's, again, policies and procedures in place to rectify and to report those types of circumstances if they were to occur.
Okay. And my last part of that question is, say the building is a gun-free zone building, and all of a sudden my class got transferred into that building to a classroom because the other one we were in just didn't function correctly, which occasionally happens here. Classes move around. And say that's right in the middle of my day, 3 days a week. So, and it's the only class that I can take because it's the only one offered for that semester. And I needed to graduate. what, it falls along, again, along that lines, what am I going to end up doing with that weapon if I'm parked over at the stadium,
Right.
my class got moved down here to the language building,
Right.
and I don't have that 10 minutes because I'm a slow walker, I'm an old guy, go all the way to the stadium and make it back to that language class.
Right.
That's going to take me far longer than 10 minutes.
Right. Right.
So what's going to happen if that situation occurs like that, because I'm not supposed to self-identify. So one of my reasons why I need to, you know, I can't really go to the campus police and say, hey, I'm a CHL license holder and I got a class in this building and I just want to hand you my gun,
Or-
because I don't really want to walk into the police station with my concealed handgun license. I mean, my gun. I walk into my license and show them my license, but walking into a police station with a gun is kind of a stupid thing.
And,
in this day and age.
we don't have an answer for you. We know it's an issue, and it even goes to the concept of secured lockers. Well, if you're over there hanging out the secured lockers, you kind of self-identified yourself, and so we got to balance all that to figure out how's the best to handle this. You know, you said the purpose of the law is anonymity, so how do we balance these challenges that we're going to face? I think the first thing that helps with that is really identifying these gun-free zones. Are we really talking about a significant amount of classrooms, or perhaps a building that may have a couple of classrooms in it, and then go from there of what we're going to have to do. And you know, I would like to think that you know, well, I do know we've certainly provided the opportunity for everyone to provide input, either in forums like this or through the website, but I would like to think we're going to get it perfect the first time, but there's going to have to be modifications. There's going to be, you know, you'd refer to them as loopholes. Hopefully they're not substantial things, but there's things that we're just not going to address that are going to have to be modified. Policies are always amended to where we take that into account. You know, we never thought about this. Now this is occurring. What do we do regarding the policy regarding that particular issue?
That's, from my understanding, the law and why they put it in there. That's part of why the 2-year update, September the 1st, on every even year, same year that the legislation meets, that's why they put that in there for universities to have that chance to update and amend as needed. And from my understanding, reading the Texas legislation site that has the law in there, and reading and listening to some of the arguments and stuff, that's kind of why they gave the universities, or put in there every 2 years, update your policy in writing, and that gives you the chance to continuously, it's a flowing policy, it's not a
improve it.
set in policy.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. It's the quiet. So, all right. Well, a couple things before we leave. First, thank you for coming. Appreciate your time, your comments, your questions, your input. Trust me when I say the committee, I know we have a few members here, but there's 23 of us overall, will take all that input into consideration. That's why we're doing these town halls and why we're recommending you fill out the web form, et cetera. The second thing is that, you know, like I said before, it doesn't end today. So if you want to continue to be updated, the Campus Carry website, campuscarry.unt.edu, will be updated as we make progress. Timeline is the draft of that policy is going to go to President Smatros in the middle of December. Also, if you have other thoughts that you want to share with us, either use that web form, share your thoughts on the website, or just campuscarry@unt.edu, and all that goes to all 23 members of our committee. Other than that, thanks for coming. I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday. Appreciate it.